All right, we're going to start talking about natural selection. This is a huge theme in evolution and a big reason why organisms are able to change over time. In fact, that's probably the main driving force and main definition of how organisms change over time. So get out your guided notes and a pencil if you don't have one yet. Our first question we're going to ask is, how does phenotype affect reproduction and survival? So first of all, we need to know that phenotype, let's see if I define this here. A phenotype, okay, this is this word here, is a physical feature. Okay, so physically, what do you look like? Okay, does it matter if you're red or black? Red with black spots, black with red spots. Okay, so we observe, this is, if you were in class, you would be able to see that you would know that we went through this as a class discussion. What do you observe here? We see lots of different phenotypes, right? We have some black bugs with red spots on it, black with orange, and orange with black, and different number of spots, right? Lots of different phenotypes here. Okay. How many different species of insects are shown here is the main question. What do you think? Do you think this is several different species? Maybe 16? Does it depend on whether you have no spots or black shell with red spots, or where is the dividing line between species? We talk about species a lot. How many species of insects do you think are shown here? In order to understand the answer to that, we have to understand what does it mean to be the same species. Okay. Not sure if I'm supposed to, let's see. All right, so actually these are all the same one species. This is a species called Harmonia axyritis. I probably said that incorrectly, but these are all ladybugs, and they come in a variety of phenotypes. We have a lot of natural variation in their traits. Okay, at this point I would encourage you to open up your workbook and read page 19. It tells you a little bit about ladybugs and their different phenotypes and some interesting fun facts about them. So, given the different number of phenotypes, right, the different colors, different colorations, right, different numbers of spots, how might this variety in phenotypes or these traits affect the survival of the individual ladybugs? Does looking like this one benefit them or cause a disadvantage compared to one that looks like this? How might the variety in traits, how they look, how might their phenotype affect their survival? Hopefully at this point you are thinking in terms of camouflage, and in order to survive you have to not be eaten by a predator. So one way that your survival might be improved if you are a bright red bug on a green leaf is if you didn't have a lot of predators, right? So it depends on the environment, right? If there are a lot of predators, you might be better off crawling around in the shade, right? On a darker leaf, or having this kind of phenotype, right? The ladybugs, when they're born, are not going to have a choice to become red or orange or black. They are given what they are given through their genes. So their survival with their given phenotype is highly dependent on their environment. How many predators are there? What kind of color is the environment? Okay, in the same way, how might their phenotype, or the variety of traits, how might this affect how well they reproduce? How are they going to be able to make more babies, right, and pass along their genes? Is it more effective to look like this if you want to reproduce, Or is it more effective to look like this? Or is this something that's more attractive to mates? How might the variety of traits, or how might your phenotype affect your reproduction? How are traits, or our phenotypes, connected with reproduction? Why does it matter for reproduction whether you look like this, or this, or this? Is one more attractive than the other? Is one less attractive than the other? Do you have to be visible in order to reproduce with a mate? And think beyond ladybugs at this point. You think about the birds and how they have different bird calls, mating calls, and mating behaviors. Some of them have some pretty elaborate dances, mating dances. How are those connected with each other? All right, so these are kind of similar questions, but why might different individuals in this population have different rates of survival and reproduction? Well, again, depending on the environment, if there's a lot of predators, the ones that are more noticeable are going to be less camouflaged, and the predators might eat them. That puts a damper on their survival, doesn't it? And if there aren't as many predators, you might see some some of the brighter ones being more successful with reproduction, because if everybody's surviving in an environment without too many predators, then the flashier ones, the ones with prettier spots, right, they might have a better chance at finding a mate and reproducing and passing along their genes. Okay. So again, it comes down to their environment. What could change in their environment such that maybe the black ones would be more successful and the red ones might be less successful? Hopefully you're starting to follow the conversation here. It's all about surviving and reproducing. You have to be able to do both in order to pass along your genes. You cannot reproduce if you have not survived. Okay. So natural selection is the differential survival and reproduction of individuals due to differences in phenotype. Okay, this is kind of a complicated way of saying how you look matters. The different features that you have, the phenotype matters. And if it is a phenotype that allows you to survive and reproduce better, then you will be selected for. Your genes will remain in the population. You will be able to have babies, and you'll be able to produce further generations. So, step one is to survive, right? Don't get eaten. Don't make sure that you, if you have a phenotype or features that allow you to eat a lot of food, right, and not be eaten by predators, that is a really good start to being selected for. Okay. Number two, you need to be able to reproduce. Maybe you're really good at hiding and surviving and eating, but if you cannot find a mate who will reproduce with you, then that is the end of your genetic contribution to the population. You cannot pass along your genes. So if you're able to do both of these, then step three would be pass along your genes to the offspring. Whatever if you are able to reproduce, your genes are going to be the ones being passed along to the rest of the population, which means those traits, right, those genes that lead to red color in your shell, or black color, or orange dots, or red dots, or whatever, those are going to remain in the population. Okay. Now, an important word here is fitness. Okay. Now, in human in our society, we think about fitness as physical fitness, but in science, this means this is a descriptor of the ability of an organism to survive, reproduce, and pass its alleles to the next generation. Okay, so how well you can do step 1 through 3 is a measure of fitness. So if there's an organism with high fitness, that means that they are likely to be passing along their genes. Okay? Survival of the fittest. Okay, all right. One important thing to note here is that natural selection occurs at the population level, not the individual level, and this happens over generations and generations and generations of time. Okay, just because it would be advantageous for this, if this ladybug would be better off as a black ladybug with red spots instead of the other way around, there is no changing that phenotype. Once they are born, once their genetics are set, that is what they have to live with. But as a population, if there are a lot of predators eating the red ones and the orange ones because they're bright colored, then these black ones are going to be remaining, and those are going to be more successful with reproduction. So over time, the population is going to have more black ladybugs. If that makes sense. We'll do a few examples in class. But it is important to know that natural selection is not about the individual changing color. It is the population of ladybugs showing a shift in how many are orange versus red versus black over generations of time. Okay, so the phenotypes of individuals are set in place, but the genes that will show up in the next generation are not. And these are based on who is able to survive and reproduce. So, any traits that increase fitness. Oh, I'm way in the middle of the ladybugs here. Okay. All right, the traits that increase fitness, again, this is an organism's ability to survive and or reproduce, they remain in the gene pool, and we say that these are selected for. So if being black shelled here is increases fitness, then that trait is going to be selected for. I think I just need to have these videos without my face in them. Alright, so the benefit of a trait depends on the selective pressures, the numbers of predators, mates, resource availability, etc. Selective pressures are essentially anything that can kill you, right? Anything that can select against you. So this might include predators for these ladybugs, right? Spiders, birds, mates, the availability of mates, the number of resources that they have to eat. Here are the aphids we talked about earlier in the semester. All right, so there are some beneficial traits like the ability to camouflage, maybe to create toxic chemicals in your body. That is a beneficial trait that might deter predators. So those are things that are determined by genes. And I think this is our last slide. Let's see. Let's make sure. Yep. So final thought here is that natural selection requires variation or genetic diversity. If we don't have this kind of variation within a population, we aren't going to see a shift from red to black or black to yellow or whatever might happen. We do need genetic diversity to see this shift in phenotype over time. So that is one final thought here. So we are going to look at some different examples in class of natural selection and how exactly it happens. There are lots of different selective pressures that can drive natural selection, and humans are one of them. Environmental conditions are another. So lots of different ways that natural selection can happen here.